What really happens when she realizes that you've lost interest? It's not quite what you might expect. It's sharper, more revealing, and it can completely reverse the dynamic in your favor. The way she responds will reveal everything you need to know about her true feelings and about the power you hold within the relationship. Stay with me, because understanding her reaction can give you a significant advantage you never even realized you had. First, there's the initial shock of losing control. When a woman becomes aware that you've lost interest, the shock hits harder than you might think. It's not merely about surprise. It's about the sudden awareness that the dynamic she once held in her grasp has shifted completely. Up until now, she might have felt secure in the belief that you were invested, predictable, and emotionally involved. But when that energy suddenly vanishes, it creates an emotional ripple she cannot ignore. This shock stems from the loss of certainty. Certainty is comforting. It tells her exactly where she stands, reassuring her that you're still paying attention and remaining emotionally present. Losing that certainty pushes her into unfamiliar territory. She begins to wonder, what changed? Did I misread him? Was there something I didn't notice? These questions are born not only from confusion, but also from a fear of losing the connection she believed she controlled. Here's the powerful part. This moment of shock is where the balance begins to shift. Your silence and withdrawal create an air of mystery. She no longer knows where she stands, and that uncertainty begins to pull at her emotions. Her mind becomes preoccupied with the question of why, and that single question can start to dominate her thoughts. The most important thing for you here is not to fill in the blanks. Let her sit with that shock and those unanswered questions. It's in this discomfort that she begins to reevaluate you and her own actions. Second, there's her need to reclaim validation. In relationships, validation functions like oxygen. When she feels your attention and interest slipping away, it creates a void that her mind cannot easily ignore. That emptiness triggers her instinct to win back that validation, to make sure she still holds an important place in your life. But it's not solely about emotions, it's also about regaining a sense of power and control. You may notice small, subtle changes in her behavior during this time. She might reach out more often, sending seemingly casual texts that are actually small tests. Messages like, "Hey, how have you been?" or "I saw something today that reminded me of you." These are never random. They're calculated attempts to measure your emotional state and to see whether you'll engage. She's searching for proof that she still matters, that she still has some influence over you. But if her efforts don't bring the response she's hoping for, her actions might escalate. She could try to provoke a reaction by mentioning other people, or by acting as though she's completely unfazed by your absence. But that isn't real indifference. It's a way to test your boundaries and your emotional steadiness. The mistake most people make here is giving in too soon, misreading her attempts to regain validation as genuine affection, and falling back into old patterns of chasing or over-explaining. The real power, however, lies in holding your ground. By staying calm and detached, you force her to work harder to figure you out. This subtle yet deep shift changes the way she sees you, making her realize you're no longer the person she thought she had all figured out. Third, curiosity takes over and drives her to reevaluate. Once the initial shock has faded and her attempts to win back validation have failed, curiosity becomes the dominant force. But this curiosity isn't only about you, it's also about understanding what changed and why. People are naturally analytical, especially in matters of the heart. When your behavior changes unexpectedly, it sparks the need to figure out the reason. She starts replaying past conversations and interactions in her head, analyzing each detail in search of clues. Did she miss something? Did she overlook something critical? These questions aren't fleeting thoughts. They play on a loop in her mind. She may even turn to friends for advice, trying to piece together a story that explains your actions. Curiosity leads to reflection, and as she digs deeper, she starts to notice things she once ignored. Your qualities, your efforts, and the uniqueness you brought to her life. Your absence now acts like a magnifier, making those traits shine brighter in her memory. The best part about this stage is that you don't have to lift a finger. Her own thoughts do all the work. The more curious she becomes, the more invested she grows in understanding what happened. And the more invested she gets, the more she realizes just how much she stands to lose. Fourth comes the role of ego. Ego is a powerful player in this scenario. It's closely tied to her sense of self and control. When that control is challenged, her ego reacts defensively. Knowing you're no longer as interested as you once were forces her to face a version of herself she may not want to acknowledge. The ego thrives on validation and certainty. When you are consistently attentive and responsive, it reinforces her sense of importance in your life. But the moment you pull back, that reinforcement disappears, leaving her with an inner conflict. She starts to question whether she misjudged her influence over you. If she once believed she held the upper hand, your withdrawal forces her to rethink everything. Her ego might prompt her to act out, making indirect comments, trying to spark jealousy, or projecting an overly confident facade to mask her insecurity. Your job here is to remain steady. Don't let these ego-fueled reactions drag you back into the old dynamic. Your calm composure will unsettle her far more than any emotional outburst ever could. In time, her ego will fade into the background, and that's when genuine reflection begins. Fifth, we reach the turning point, when she begins to truly feel the void. Silence is underestimated by most people, yet its impact becomes impossible to ignore once she starts to feel the space you've left behind. It's not just about missing your presence. It's about missing the attention, the energy, and the consistency you brought into her world. Initially, she might shrug it off, assuming she'll adapt to this new reality. But as the days and weeks pass, the absence settles in like a weight. She starts to notice the little things she once took for granted, the way you made her laugh, the way you listened, the stability you provided. These realizations arrive in waves, each one stronger than the last. The void is not only emotional, it's psychological. She begins questioning whether she undervalued you, or whether losing your interest reflects something she did wrong. This introspection forces her to confront her behavior and its consequences. Your task here is simple. Do nothing. Let her feel it. Let her sit with it. The longer she experiences this emptiness, the more profound your absence becomes in her mind. Sixth, we have the reason why silence amplifies your value. Silence is often misunderstood. It's not about ignoring her or trying to play childish games. It's about deliberately creating a space where she is forced to think about everything you brought into her life. When you go silent, you remove the constant reassurance she might have grown comfortable with. That sudden absence makes her reevaluate your worth, and that's where the shift begins. Your silence carries weight because it's unexpected. Most people, when they feel disappointed or frustrated, will try to explain themselves, seek closure, or fight for the other person's attention. But when you take a step back and remain quiet, you send a very clear message without uttering a single word. I don't need to prove my value to you. My actions speak on their own. As time goes on, this silence starts amplifying your presence in her mind. She replays past moments, recalling things she might have overlooked before. Maybe it's your consistency, your patience, or the way you made her feel special. These positive qualities become even more vivid in your absence because there is no new noise to distract her from remembering them. Silence also prompts her to question herself. She might think, why hasn't he reached out? Has he really moved on? Did I underestimate him? These aren't just idle thoughts. They create a sense of urgency. The longer you stay quiet, the more significant your presence becomes in her thoughts, and the more she realizes how much she misses having you in her life. Seventh, the emotional tension begins to build. The longer your silence stretches on, the more it creates a unique form of emotional tension. And this isn't only about her missing you. It's also about the unresolved questions and feelings spinning in her mind. The uncertainty of where she stands becomes a force that drives her thoughts back to you again and again. Emotional tension is powerful because it disrupts her sense of control. She may have once believed she held the upper hand, but your quiet withdrawal shatters that illusion. This sudden lack of control stirs up a mix of emotions: regret for not appreciating you, curiosity about what you're doing now, and even guilt for possibly taking you for granted. That tension also makes her hyper-aware of everything that reminds her of you. A song you once shared, a familiar place, even a random conversation that echoes something you once said. Every reminder deepens the emotional pull, making her think about you more intensely and more often. 8th, curiosity transforms into action. Curiosity has a way of pushing people to take steps they normally wouldn't. Once that emotional tension reaches its peak, she feels an overwhelming need to close the distance between you. At first, her actions may be subtle, liking your posts, sending a casual message, or creating small excuses to initiate contact. But as her curiosity grows stronger, her attempts to reconnect become more deliberate. When she does reach out, it's a clear sign she's been thinking about you constantly. She's probably spent days or even weeks analyzing her feelings, replaying past moments, and trying to figure out what went wrong. This process often leads to one realization: losing you might have been a much bigger mistake than she originally thought. How you respond here matters greatly. This is your moment to show that you've grown, that you've moved forward, and that you're not simply waiting for her return. Keep your responses light, confident, and a little detached. If she messages you, don't dive into deep emotional discussions immediately. Keep it casual, letting her see that you're open but not desperate. This balance of confidence and detachment forces her to see you in a new way. It tells her you're someone worth pursuing, someone who won't be easily swayed. By maintaining this composure, you shift the power dynamic in your favor, showing her that winning you back is not going to be as easy as she may have assumed. 9th, why emotional control always wins. Emotional control is one of the most magnetic traits you can have, and it becomes even more visible when she starts trying to reconnect. When she reaches out, she may test your patience or try to provoke emotional reactions, just to measure your interest level. How you handle these moments determines how she'll see you from that point forward. Imagine she brings up an old disagreement or tries to stir jealousy by mentioning someone else. If you react with anger or frustration, you reveal that you're still emotionally tangled in her behavior. But if you stay calm, unbothered, and composed, you send a powerful message of strength and self-confidence. You're showing her that while you care, you're not controlled by her actions. True emotional control is not about suppressing your emotions. It's about mastering them. It's about proving you can handle disappointment, rejection, or conflict with maturity and poise. This stability is rare, and it's incredibly attractive because it offers a sense of security. She'll see that no matter what happens, you won't be easily shaken. The beauty of emotional control is that it draws the focus back to you. Instead of chasing her or reacting to her tests, you're living your life and protecting your peace. This independence makes you stand out and leaves a lasting impression she won't be able to forget. 10th, the quiet strength of moving on gracefully. One of the most impactful things you can do is to move forward with grace. This doesn't mean cutting her out completely or pretending you never cared. It means showing that you have the self-respect to prioritize your own growth and happiness. When you move on gracefully, you send a clear and unshakable message. I value myself too much to remain in a situation that doesn't meet my standards. This kind of self-respect is magnetic because it shows you're not afraid to walk away from something that doesn't serve you. It also forces her to question her own choices and behavior. Graceful detachment isn't about revenge or manipulation. It's about putting your focus back on you. It's about pouring your energy into the things that fulfill you, your work, your passions, your personal development. When she sees you thriving without her, it builds a quiet intrigue and admiration. The lasting impression you leave by moving on with dignity is powerful. She'll remember that you handled everything with maturity and calm strength, and that will make her fully realize what she lost. Over time, that realization can lead to deep regret and a desire to come back. But by that point, you'll be standing in a position of strength, deciding whether she's truly worth your time and energy. What are your views on this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I will personally read all of your comments. And if you seriously want to level up in life, don't forget to show some love by hitting the like and subscribe button. Stay strong. Until next time.